Manel Kape is one of the most frustrating yet exciting fighters in the flyweight division. The guy has all the tools, power, speed, technical striking, but somehow he keeps getting in his own way, whether it's hesitating in a big moment, missing weight, or pulling out of fights. There's always something stopping him from breaking through to that next level. I mean, look at his UFC debut against Alexander Pantoja. That was a massive opportunity against a future champ, and instead of going for it, he just didn't pull the trigger. He was gun shy. Don't get me wrong, he had his moments for sure, but he fought way too passively. Then you got his fight with Mohamed Mokaev. That fight was a huge chance to derail an undefeated ranked fighter, but instead he dropped the ball, but was hesitant again. But despite all that, when Manel Kape is locked in, he's an absolute problem. He's got that rare knockout power at 125, his striking is crisp, and when he fights with confidence, he looks like he could just beat anyone in the division. And at UFC Tampa, we just saw that version of Kape. From the opening bell from Bruno Silva, he was aggressive, sharp, and completely in control. His striking was on point, mixing up his attacks beautifully. Even after dealing with multiple low blows and a point deduction against Silva, he didn't let it shake him off. He stayed composed, kept the pressure on, and when the moment came, he delivered a picture-perfect body kick, followed by flurries that left Silva defensive. It was the kind of finish that reminded people why there was so much hype around Kape in the first place. Now, Manel Kape is set to fight Alayev this Saturday, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Alayev is good, man. Really good. This is not some easy bounce back fight or a warm-up fight for Kape. Alayev is 18-2, undefeated in the UFC, and he's got that gritty, well-rounded style that can give Kape some serious real problems, if he's not locked in, that is. The thing about Alayev is that he's just solid everywhere. He's got a strong wrestling base, slick submissions, and a technical striker that might not be the most flashiest, but it's effective. He's the type of guy who doesn't give you a lot of openings, and if you give him any kind of momentum, he'll smother you, grind you down, and make it a really long night for you. He's also not afraid to drag fights into deep water, which is where Kape has historically struggled when he's not dictating the pace. The fight is important for Kape, not just because of the rankings, but because it's another proven moment for him. He's been so close to a title shot before, but he keeps getting in his own way. And if not weight issues, it's missed opportunities in big fights. And if it's not that, it's pulling out of key matchups. At some point, he's got to stop letting these setbacks define his career. What's crazy is that when he's on, he looks like a guy who could beat anyone in the division. Just look at his last performance against Bruno Silva. That was Kape at his best, aggressive, precise, and putting on a striking clinic. Even after dealing with multiple low blows, he didn't let it faze him. He just kept walking Silva down and found that brutal body kick finish that reminded everyone why he was one of the top ranked fighters. But the thing with Kape is consistency. Can you put together back-to-back elite performances without something going wrong? That's what people want to see. And if he goes in there and wipes out Alayev, there's no denying that he's right back in the title picture. But if he lets Alayev dictate the pace, if he's hesitant, or if he gets caught up in another weird controversy, then we're back to square one with the same conversation about wasted potential. Because this fight is a big test for Kape mentality as much as his skills. If he's serious about making a run at the title, he's got to handle business this Saturday. No excuses, no off nights, just the elite version of Kape that we all know that exists. Because if he doesn't show up 100%, Alayev is the type of guy who will take full advantage of it and leave him behind in the rankings. Manel Kape has all the tools to be a top guy at the flyweight division. His takedown defense is actually really solid, and when he fights aggressively, he looks like one of the best in the world. But the problem is, he has tendencies to freeze up against grapplers. And that's what worries me about going in this fight with Alayev. We've seen it happen time after time. Take his fight with Pantoja. He had a massive opportunity in the UFC debut against a guy who would eventually become a champion, and he just didn't pull the trigger. He was too hesitant, too passive, almost waiting for the perfect shot instead of just letting his hands go. Pantoja isn't even a relentless wrestler like a Mokaev or Alayev, but Kape still looks like he was second guessing himself. Now, if he had just fought with the same aggression and confidence we've seen him in his other performance, he could have won that fight. And then there's the Mokaev fight, which was another moment where he had a chance to prove himself again against an undefeated ranked fighter, but he wasn't aggressive. He let Mokaev dictate the pace. Like, to be fair, Mokaev wasn't getting takedowns at will or anything. His defense was holding up well, but it felt like he was too worried about the takedowns to let his hands go. And when you're consistently worried about what your opponent might do instead of focusing on what you do best, that's when you start making mistakes. That's why this fight with Alayev is tricky. Alayev is a guy who can wrestle, can chain takedowns together, and will test Kape's ability to fight off the back foot. If Kape stays aggressive, keeps the pressure on, and makes Alayev uncomfortable, he can absolutely win this fight. Because Kape's striking is leagues above Alayev, and his takedown defense is strong enough that if he fights with confidence, he can force Alayev into a striking battle. But if he's hesitant, if he lets Alayev dictate the tempo, then we could be looking at another frustrating night where he underperforms against a tougher grappler. This is a make it or break it moment for Kape. He needs to show he learned from those past mistakes and prove that he can handle these well-rounded guys who try to mix in the wrestling, because if he keeps freezing up against grapplers, then he's always gonna have this ceiling in the division. And that's the thing. I don't even understand why he freezes up like this. It's not like he has the bad takedown defense or anything like that. In fact, his defense wrestling is elite. The guy trains with Dagestanians when it comes to the grappling, so you know he's seen high-level wrestling every day in the gym. And when you actually look at his fights, he stuffs takedowns really well. He scrambles really well. And even when he does get taken down, he doesn't panic. So what's the problem? It's almost like he respects the grappling too much instead of just letting his own game flow. And that's what worries me about Alayev this weekend. Alayev isn't a Makayev level wrestler, but he's well-rounded. He can chain takedowns together, and if Kape gives him too much room to work, he's gonna grind out a decision and make Kape look hesitant again. But if Kape fights like he did against Bruno Silva, aggressive, confident, not overthinking, he should absolutely win this fight. His striking is way ahead of Alayev's, and his takedown defense is good enough that he should be able to keep it standing. And don't get me wrong, Kape does not fight well when he's backed up, and that's a big issue when he's up against these guys who pressure him with wrestling. When he's the one moving forward, dictating the exchanges, and letting his hands go, he looks like one of the best flyweights in the world. But the moment he starts backing up, he becomes way less effective. And it's weird because he has good footwork, good head movement, but when he's put on the back foot, he just doesn't throw as much. Instead of countering with confidence, he starts waiting too long, reacting instead of forcing his own offense. And when you combine that with a wrestler who keeps feigning takedowns, it's like Kape gets stuck in no man's land, not committing to his striking because he's too worried about the shot, but also not fully defending this takedown because he's hesitant to sprawl aggressively. Look at his fight against Makayev or even Pantoja. When they pressured him, he just wasn't the same fighter. He let them dictate the pace, and instead of throwing counters that made them respect his power, he kind of froze up and let them work. And that's a huge problem when you're fighting someone like Alayev, who is consistently moving forward, throwing volume, and mixing takedown attempts. On the flip side though, when Kape is the one walking forward, he's a monster. Look at his fight against Bruno Silva. He was aggressive, he controlled the center, and he was the one making Silva react to him. That's when his speed, accuracy, and knockout power really shine. If he can fight the way he did against Alayev, he can absolutely win. But if he lets Alayev push him back and makes him hesitate, we might see the same frustrating version of Kape that gets stuck waiting too long to pull the trigger. It all comes down to whether he can stay aggressive and force Alayev to respect his striking instead of letting himself get walked down. But I'm going to roll with Manel Kape in this one. I know the odds are against him, and yeah, a lot of people are doubting him, but now is the time that he proves that he evolved. Like I said earlier, this is a make it or break it fight for him. If he's ever going to put it together and show that he's a real contender, this is the moment to do it.